Welcome to Democracy and the Arts. Tonight we are live in Union Terminal here in Cincinnati, Ohio, home of the Holocaust and Humanities Center. The center is co-hosting this evening's event. This is the third installment of the 6 at 6 community lecture series produced by Northern Kentucky University's Scripps Howard Center for Civic Engagement. This series is designed to showcase the research and creative activity by NKU faculty and students. My name is Tracey Bonner, and I am Associate Professor of Dance in the School of the Arts. The dancers you are experiencing in artistic expression are members of a dance company founded by me here at NKU. They are Lavette, Arianna, Kasey, Madisyn, and Maiya. And some are also founding members of this special group that we call the Metanoia Dance Company. More on that later. But right now, please take a moment and truly see the humans and the artists on this stage. All the dancers in front of you, including me, are different. We all have different experiences. We excel at and are drawn to different genres of dance. We have different expectations about what dance is in our lives and our futures, both individually and collectively. Some on this stage have dreams of a life on the Broadway or concert stage. Some want to teach the children the value of the arts. Some want to use dance to create a more equitable artistic experience for others or impact societal change. And we all want to express pure joy. Regardless of any of these factors, dance is how we define our lives. It is our hope for the future, and it is our purest form of joy in motion. Now, what you may not be aware of is that culturally, and specifically outside of the United States, dance is often the highest expression of the human experience. Think of any cultural experience you might have participated in or observed as an example. Some cultures have used dance as a preparation for war or as a preparation for a hunt. Some cultures use dance as a celebration of marriage. Some use dance as a rite of passage to adulthood. And regardless of what you were thinking about dance or movement, you're absolutely correct in your assessment. Dance is a celebratory experience and is a way of knowing oneself completely. Well, in our uncertain and challenging pandemic world, don't we all need a little more joy and a way of knowing oneself a little better, more than ever? Of course, we perform live, as that is the function of a dance company. But what makes this company different is that we are investigators of the human condition. We seek to understand and create dance as a representation of humanity in our global, regional, and local societies. We want to be continual participants towards the cultural outcomes we desire. We create art that allows us to collaborate creatively, and we choose to reflect those discoveries back to the world through dance. We have a vested interest in how we interact with our world as artists, as members of a global community, and simply as human beings on the planet. So maybe this gives you some understanding into who we are and why we have been asked to present today. For me, I am the leader of this group, but only because I am the faculty member of record. I am a dancer. I am a choreographer. My language is the movement of the body. The way the body moves, arrives, releases, contracts, folds, expands, and breathes is the language I use to define my life experience. This physically embodied art reflects all things human, as every one of us has a body, and that body moves in any number of ways. For a non-dancer, what might seem like entertainment, these dancers complete turns, leaps, or death-defying acts in revolt of gravity. What this vocabulary really demonstrates is a physical example of what we are doing on the inside. This very individualized discovery of self is really an investigation of the human spirit that drives us and the joy and the purpose we find in that artistic passion. But don't be fooled. These incredibly vulnerable acts of sharing and trusting in others requires the empathetic knowing of oneself as we enter into any creative space. Because you see, just like the flight attendant reminding us to put on our oxygen mask first before helping others in case of emergency, we cannot give collaboratively if we do not truly know ourselves. This is how we provide an empowerment of the lived experience, which really means we reflect humanity back to itself. This is why I believe dance, at its core, has a very real connection to democracy at its core. The definition of democracy is government by the people, or a form of government in which supreme power is vested in the people and exercised directly by them or by their elected agents under a free electoral system. Therefore, if people are the center of the exercised power, then human beings should be the center of democracy. Or they should be. America is defined by a system that states of the people, by the people, and for the people as a creed that we hold dear. But what happens when that democracy or the ideas of that democracy falter? What happens when we lose faith in the system, or the system no longer represents the noble causes that we seek? What happens when democracy becomes the voice of the few and not the voice of the masses? How do people find their way back to democracy in ways that are personally authentic, carry accountability, and provide access and voice for those that feel disenfranchised? The answer might be as simple as the arts. Because it is through the arts, be that literature, music, or dance, that we begin to see how we as humans have an impact on the future of humanity and society at large. The arts are often the first time we recognize that something is different. And it's often the first time we see something that is a different vantage point than our own. These aha moments lead us to a discovery of a greater calling for the purpose of our lives, if we are listening. Take the human beings on this stage as an example. The dancers in front of you are, as individuals, represent many things. I am a woman. I am a dancer. I am a choreographer. I am a voter. I am an artist. I am a global citizen. I am a change maker. I am a human being. I am an American. I am a participant in my future. I am also someone who is repeatedly interrupted and silenced. Someone who feels unsupported by and isolated from a sense of community. Someone who has been let down by the system. Someone who has lost faith in humanity. Someone who is disappointed with my fellow human. And collectively, we are exhausted. We are overwhelmed by what is expected of us as individuals, and at the same time, we are underwhelmed by the democracy that is supposed to support us. So I ask again, more specifically, can the arts help people find their way back to the meaning of democracy in ways that are personally authentic, carry accountability, and provide access and voice for those that feel disenfranchised? The arts teach us through our experiences, The democratic process requires participation. So these two seemingly different identities collide in how artistic interpretations and diplomatic representations create experiences that stick in ways nothing else can. In her book, Daring Greatly, Brené Brown states, "Art has the power to render sorrow beautiful. It has the ability to capture our pain and deliver us from it at the same time. The transformative power of the arts is in the sharing, and it is in this sharing that we know we are not alone in our feelings or in our quest for truth." Can you remember the very first artistic experience you ever had that truly moved you? I can tell you about mine because it led to being on this stage tonight. It was seeing the ballet The Nutcracker at 6 years old. While my grandfather slept through the entire ballet that evening, I hung onto every dynamic lift or turn or jeté, entranced by the dancers around me. I came home that night declaring to my mother that I would be starting dancing lessons after the Christmas holiday. I remember standing in my mother's yellow kitchen, stating that research must begin to find the appropriate dancing school. Now, no one in my family had danced before, so this was a slightly tall order from a precocious 6-year-old. And yet that precocious young girl became an empathetic woman who continues to make art today. This is a completely true story. And while not everyone follows their childhood passion to this degree, each of us has something like this that altered our thought process. These experiences change us forever because that is the power of the arts. They are meant to impact us personally and change us forever, just like the ballet did for me. In our dance company, the approach to creative discovery is rather abstract. Take the expression you're seeing on stage right now, because what you are seeing lives in this moment and in this time, and could not be created exactly the same way again. The dancers collectively agree upon an artistic concept, each one trusting that they will contribute effectively, investing our best selves and our most creative practices without knowing the exact outcome, but trusting in our shared contribution. This is why we love dance and why we have given our hearts and our bodies to the art form. And isn't that much like being in a functioning democracy? Because you cannot have democracy without an informed and engaged citizenry. You cannot make impactful art without a group of individuals working collectively towards an agreed upon outcome. In art and democracy, we hope that when we give more than is expected, we get more back. And just like democracy, we must respect the process because it is fragile and special and could easily be lost without the proper care. Images and experiences ignite something within us as human beings that create any number of feelings, and these representations provide a window into a specific experience that we retain in our personhood in ways that cannot be explained. As an example, and depending on your age, I am sure you remember exactly where you were when President Kennedy was assassinated, or when planes flew into the World Trade Tower on 9/11, or maybe when you heard the words for the first time, "I can't breathe." Because we have lived through these experiences both collectively and individually, we hold them in our souls in a different way. I was a resident of New York City during 9/11 and during the recovery. While I carry many memories of that time, one specific memory is when I was waiting for a subway train on the days shortly following the attack. As a young dancer, I was on my way to take class. Even though performances had been canceled, I was trying to keep a sense of normalcy, and we all agree that the studio is where we feel most at home. Alongside me on the platform waiting was a man exquisitely dressed in a Wall Street suit. Now, if you have spent any time with dancers, our attire is far from formal. We wear sweatshirts and layers of sweatpants and athletic gear, ball caps to train our bodies for the craft. If someone had taken a picture of this man and I on the subway platform, it would have been a portrait in opposites. And yet, I remember as the train arrived in the station and we began to board for the ride, he held the door for me and let me enter the car first. Now, while that may be standard in your world, I assure you this is not standard practice on the New York City subway system. He looked distinctly in my eye and said, "How are you?" I never saw that man again, but I will never forget how two seemingly unconnected individuals connected over an experience. The only way we learn love is by experiencing love. It is through acts of kindness that we learn kindness. And each of these lived experiences, artistic or human, encourage us to find our own expressions, voices, and actions. Art provides substance to the idea that being involved is not the same thing as being evolved. Art teaches us to process different perspectives and see the validity of every individual. And this is why the arts cannot change the world, but they might change people who change the world. And maybe that is what the late John Lewis meant when he said, "Cause good trouble." Because the act of making art is a commitment to reflecting humanity back into the world. Each time an artist creates an expression is it a defiant act of hope for humanity. And that hope can cause a shift in our societal outcomes. Because our ability to be impactful should not be defined by commercial definitions, but in the simple act of two people of opposing identities and backgrounds having an authentic conversation and knowing we can do better together than apart. Until we can all see each other authentically and personally, we will continue this cyclical nature of the historic challenges. We must find a way to be open-minded enough to recognize, as Amanda Gorman so graciously stated in the inauguration in 2020, there is always light, if only we are brave enough to see it, if only we are brave enough to be it. And that brings us to why we are here in the Museum Center today. In considering how democracy and the arts engage with one another, we could not begin to have this conversation without considering the Holocaust and Humanities Center housed in this building. This museum is dedicated to giving voice to those that have made an active choice to stand up for justice. And while each story you will experience in that museum is different, they show how each person can activate their own unique set of strengths. Because when we are faced with the destruction of humanity, we have a choice to make. We can be the victim. We can choose to be the perpetrator. We can choose to be a bystander, or we can choose to become an upstander. Now, while all these experiences are identities that we've experienced at some point in our lives, it is through the experiences of the arts that a window is opened to a new world, because that is how the light gets in. And then our eyes are opened, allowing us to choose, because this is democracy at its core, the art of choosing our response, choosing to stand up for others. Because to be perfectly clear, becoming an upstander requires specific action. In her book, Why Are All the Black Kids Sitting Together in the Cafeteria?, Beverly Danny Tatum states that activism in any form is much like a moving sidewalk at the airport. There are people who are passively enjoying the casual stillness and are just along for the ride. There are people who are using the sidewalk to get ahead. And finally, There are those that are actively defying the movement of the sidewalk, walking away from the crowd and purposefully choosing to move in the opposite direction. For artists, there is no other choice than becoming an upstander, because the nature of being an artist pushes us to consider our impact on society. The human experience teaches us empathy for others, and the combination of these two ideals creates a surge that is undeniable. This is why we act. Whether we choose to march in a protest, knit gloves and hats for the homeless, or load trucks with supplies for people affected by global climate change, the rising up, the upstanding, the taking of the stage, and creating actionable experiences empowers us to lead, even when we think we have nothing to say. It creates in us a hope that maybe our desires for democracy can still be realized. The arts teach us to trust again and create the accountability we need as a society to have those hard conversations when they need to be had with compassion, understanding, and authenticity. The arts shift the identity of what an upstander is from an iconic image carrying a protest sign to the person next to you on a subway. In my current artistic quest, I am rarely the sole artistic developer. In a group of artists like this dance company, we all work diligently to provide a dynamic space for all who come into our artistic circle, and this is why metanoia defines our company's identity. The word metanoia means a profound transformation, because that is what we seek to do. Transform our world through the art we make collectively. I am a dancer. I am a choreographer. I use art making as a springboard for change. Dance is my language of choice, and it is the choice of the beautiful humans around me. We use the art we make to reflect on a personal commitment to leave the world a little bit better than we found it. Personally, it is also my hope that as you experience these dancers around me, that you're moved to consider using them for your future conference presentations. They appreciate the work, and they are much more engaging than a PowerPoint. We are artists. We are upstanders. We continually strive to be a beacon of light in the darkness, to be a place of peacefulness, to be an embodied spirit learning through others, to be an architect for change, to be a collector of humanity's evolution, to be a translator for the human story, to be a transcriber of the human experience, and a dealer in hope. We can only find hope if we find our voice. We can only find our voice if we find the courage to stand up for someone that cannot advocate for themselves. By doing this, we empower those around us to do the same, not in the way that we prescribe, but in a way that works for them. We must learn to see people as people, allowing all people the freedom to be their own person in their own way. We must learn to listen and not interpret obstacles as a personal assault, but as an opportunity for evolution. And we must recognize that hard conversations are only hard if we choose not to listen. We must recognize we have an active participation in the outcome of our lives and the lives of others. Therefore, we must become a person who stands.
How to be a person. 1. Find your voice. Know that not all languages contain words. Your voice could be music, it could be dance. It will be what expresses you most sincerely. Your voice is an art. If your heart is broken, make art with the pieces. 2. Remember that you are an artist. Regardless of how constantly the world will try to drive it out of you, or how a real job will try to bury the part of you that communicates your feelings when language fails, you are an artist. Whether it is with food or building robots, you will know your medium the instant you realize how in love you are with what it brings out of you. 3. Apologize. You will not always be right. You will not always be wrong. You will hopefully always be learning. Atonement is a sacrifice of pride. Explanation of why you did what you did or said what you said will not vindicate you. If the cost to heal someone is only your pride, then apologize and be grateful that you received peace at such a bargain. 4. Forgive. Realize that some people are still learning. If forgiveness is not possible, then think of everything you have ever wanted to be forgiven for but weren't. Hold that uneasiness in your mind until you feel your desire for absolution becoming a wish. Realize you can grant this wish for others. If you are waiting for forgiveness, be prepared to wait. Be prepared to stand in the path of time and wither. Respect that forgiveness is difficult. Not all trespasses are equal, and not everyone will heal according to your schedule. 5. Accept that farting is funny. Granted, not always appropriate and sometimes unpleasant, but if you cannot laugh, if you are more offended by a fart than by war, famine, political corruption, deforestation, racism, sexism, classism, the wrongfully imprisoned, the treatment of women, the foreclosing on homes while banks' debts are forgiven, if a fart offends you more than any of that, then you are not a person and cannot be helped. Join a cult. Have some Kool-Aid. 6. Know that love is a vulnerability, but not a weakness. Love is the volunteer in you that raises its hand and steps forward without needing to be rewarded. Love is a currency that functions in reverse because the only way to be wealthy with it is to give more of it away. 7. Don't laugh to fit in. Laughter should be honest. If there is no sincerity in your joy, then your happiness will be a forgery that fools only yourself. 8. Do not fear to be hated, but be cautious towards those inhabited by hate. You will be hated. Regardless of who you are, what you say, or what you do. You will be hated for your successes or your failures, for good looks or bad looks, for intelligence or stupidity. Hate is the child of the hater. Nurtured by the beliefs it has fed, you often will have no control over what you are hated for. Know that antipathy becomes the master of its owner. Know that if you are going to be hated regardless of who you are, then be fearless enough to be who you want to be. Hate is no more eloquently articulated than in the poetry of the expression, not your problem. 9. Try. The tiniest dream that you try to make happen is worth more than the biggest dream you never attempt. 10. Be savagely thankful and continuously in awe of the power you possess. You are alive. Inside of an endless cosmos with the freedom that shines brightest in the dark. Choices. Your choices belong to you so intimately that they will never leave you. They, unlike the changing nature of love or the failing machinery of our bodies, will never abandon you to time. Good or bad, they will stay always, an antique that shows the future who you were and what you stood for. So know that what you choose to stand for is what will inform you of what you've chosen to stand against. So stand. Let each foot crash land into what you believe and plant them there firmly so they may take root in your convictions. And stand.
Thank you. We welcome your questions. If you are watching virtually, you can use the question function on your screen and we will answer them. The dancers probably want to get a drink of water. And we're going to come and sit down at the front of the stage. So some house lights would be great. Since I'm the only one with the mic. So, wherever. Yeah. And Felicia has a microphone over here if anybody would like to ask a question. We have one dancer that's running out because she has to be at another rehearsal on campus. So, so she's headed off to that, but the rest of us will be here. So.
We have a virtual question for you. First of all, the viewer says, "Love this."
Thank you.
And wondered how, where the innovative idea came from to have dancers demonstrate the talk. Perhaps it's a duh to you, but to many of us, I dare say it was remarkable. Thank you. So wondering about the origins of the idea.
Well, I guess I have to answer that, right, guys? I really love putting dance in places that people think dance shouldn't be, because I think that's really cool. And if you have not seen, there's a wonderful program called Dance Your PhD that is a scholarship program for students. And I did a lot of work with Dance Your PhD when I was in grad school. And so I've carried that with me. And this is the first chance I've ever gotten to actually do a Dance Your PhD. And so that's really where it came from. That's the baseline of it, but I kind of do stuff like this a lot. It's just not always in a form like this. So that's probably where it started. And then these guys just all came with me for the ride. So, yeah. Yeah, if you guys want to add. Seriously? But you guys should talk, because I've talked for like an hour. So. We danced for a while. It's true.
One mic, so I'm running back and forth tonight. Does anybody have any questions? Yes.
Thank you. So this is amazing. I don't think I've ever seen anything like this, and I'm not a young person. How does the process work? Like, do you do this speech first and then choreograph? Is every movement choreographed, or are these wonderful dancers? It doesn't seem like it is, but well, explain that. Thank you.
Well, we use improvisation a lot in our creative process. I may need to move that, maybe. Okay. We use improvisation a lot in our choreographic process, and that's part of this. This is actually a class, and so that's part of what we do in this class is learn how to create that sense of agency. But I'm going to let them talk about it more because it's kind of, they'll have a different experience than me. So.
Hello. So after the speech was made, we kind of picked certain parts that we could visualize for the audience, and then picked the parts where we should be off stage or improvising. So that was basically the make of it.
Yeah, we kind of like give ourselves key pinpoint words, and we know what parts are choreographed, and then a lot of it is just playing for us on stage, improv. So it makes it kind of easy and fun for us.
Yeah, the cool thing about work like this and art in general is that you really kind of have to go off of vibes, which sounds really casual, but that's kind of how you have to start. And because, you know, real communication is mostly nonverbal. And for dance and art and telling a story like this, you have to think of it like that. It's how can you take that nonverbal communication and make it like a thing, not just little gestures, but how do we turn it into a story and a message to give to other people? So that was kind of what are the vibes here? How are we feeling? And taking that idea and turning it into something bigger and something that we can go off of. And I think that's why it's easier to improv stuff like this, because we already have the vibes. The vibes are set. So we just have to take it.
They all kind of said it, but basically that it's a very collaborative experience. So we all have different ideas and concepts that we come up with and talk about it with each other, and then we just kind of feel the vibes and, you know, see what we all can agree upon.
And maybe will that say something about like the sections where like people picked their words, like the like that we related to when everybody had their individual kind of solo moments of like I feel left out or I feel right.
With that. With that, we kind of all just seeing what word that we resonated with. So like it was, being let down by the system or feeling like an outcast. She kind of let us choose which one we were resonating with. We kind of got a moment to kind of sit with it, and then we all individually came up with a movement that resonated with how that made us feel, and then kind of just went from there.
Do any of you remember when dance was chosen for you, like for when she saw the ballet? And do any of you plan to dance your PhD?
Maybe.
For me, I started really young, so I didn't really choose to dance. I just kind of chose not to stop dancing. I started when I was 3 years old, and so it's from a very young age. It's been my life, and I plan on definitely dancing my entire life and into my career.
I started kind of late, very late actually. But like dance and movement has always just kind of been things I did for fun. So it's an interesting approach coming into college and like having to take class and learning how to do all that stuff that you never really did before. I used to just like hang out in my room and turn on my iPod. So, but I still think that I guess that in itself is like a moment. But yeah, I totally plan on keeping on dancing and using dance as like my catalyst into wherever I go in the future.
Yeah, same like Lovey. I started when I was very young, when I was 3. I don't remember my first dance class, but I know that I was told I could never stop moving like Lovey. And I do definitely plan on dancing after college, and I have a degree in neuroscience, so I love like finding how dance and science and the brain can kind of all work together. So it's definitely fun to explore that.
I started at 2, so the same kind of thing. I never stopped. And then I plan on teaching the little ones like that so they never stop.
Sure. I'm good, I think, because of my microphone. I love the artist Shane Koizakan. He's somebody that just speaks to me. And I actually did a work about 5 years ago at another university and won an award for that. It's for the first time I discovered his work. And so whenever I feel like I need to find something that uses language in such dexterous ways, I go to him. And I spent hours and hours and hours listening to different things. And when I found this, I sat with it. I think I brought it to class one day, and I was like, guys, I think this might be it, but I'm not sure. And then I think maybe 3 weeks later, I was like, okay, this is it. This is what we're doing. Like, it finally sat with us. And that's really, I think we had that before we even had the script, right, guys? So we really started with that piece because that idea of how to be a person. I say in class and in studio all the time, I talk about taking care of your human and being a full human and having a full human experience. So that's already something that we live and breathe pretty regularly. So that opened up that door, and then we kind of started talking about the script, and then literally the last thing we put together was the opening number, which I think we did last Friday. So, yeah. Yeah.
How can we help share the word about being able to see this performance again, or see a YouTube version of it, or an upcoming performance?
I'm going to let Mark tell you about that.
We are recording it, and it will be on the 6 at 6 archive, so you'll have a chance to see it again, and we'll send everybody the link who has an RSV. Yeah, it will be on YouTube, yes. And a couple of questions from the virtual audience. First of all, a couple of comments, and I'm sure the audience here shares this. A beautiful and powerful performance. Thank you. Excellent. Those of you, since you're going to teach, you'll like this one. Excellent. Elementary, middle school, and high school students would find this to be educational and joyful. And a question about the last, kind of rap music, the poem. Could you tell us about that, please?
Sure. person, I think, the final piece of music. Yeah. So again, Shane Koizikan is a performance artist. He's Canadian and does a lot of like poetry, poetry slams and stuff like that. And again, I found his art and I fell in love with his words, and I just keep finding ways to use them because I think it's really powerful. And I think it resonates too. I also think it resonates intergenerationally. So I think that's also important. I think that everybody can find something in his work that speaks. And yeah, it hit us hard right away, and we knew that was the way to go. So,
Tracey, you get to take a rest on this one. The question is directed to the students. Love the performance. How would you envision using dance to come across cultural boundaries and share the power of democracy with different cultural groups?
I genuinely think it's not as hard as people think it is, and it doesn't always have to be like, here it is, here's the vocabulary, here's the language. I don't think it's any of that. I just think it's a matter of creating a space where people can exist, and that's it. And I think the lessons that we want so hard to be taught and to have people like perpetuate will come because they are just there. And so what we need to do to continue this going is to, be welcoming and let people exist in this space as they are, where they come from, and welcome that into the space when we're working. Especially like in academic spaces, there's sometimes where people might not feel like they're always represented accurately, or that they can't show like where they come from all the time in the spaces. So I think, especially in those kind of places, especially in younger, like when you're in elementary school, middle school, like places you're kind of forced to go. It's really important that we create that identity in those rooms. And I think it's amazing what you can find when you just, say hello to everyone. But yeah.
Well, I think let's just thank our dancers one more time, please.
we couldn't have done it without them.
And Dylan and Teddy in the booth, yeah, it's a lot of behind-the-scenes work tonight. And one of the things that you're seeing is education at work with the dancers. As Tracey said, this was done as part of the class, but the film crew here are electronic media broadcast students, so they're learning how to do, record this stage event and produce a web event. So all skills that are coming into the marketplace now. So that's part of what this is all about. Thank you for coming. I think the performers would tell you that the chance to be on stage with a live audience is something that they've missed, and we're working our way back into to all of that. I invite all of you to be with us again next week, 6 at 6. We'll be on campus at the Digitorium in Griffin Hall. And our guests will be 3 photojournalists from the Associated Press who covered the turmoil of the democracy. So we're looking at democracy and journalism. The picture that you may have noticed on the way in is the Pulitzer Prize picture from the aftermath of George Floyd's death, and the photographer who took that and won the Pulitzer Prize for that work will be among the group of 3. So I'd like to see you on campus if you can next Thursday at 6 p.m. And again, thanks for coming this evening, and we can just applaud you guys one more time because you did fantastic.